Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. Officials of the Office of the Vice President and the Education Department under VP Sara Duterte may face serious charges following the investigation by the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability. Lawmakers say during the hearings they discovered the officials took bribes and mishandled over 600 million pesos in confidential funds. The officials also lied under oath. VP Duterte herself is in hot water. She's now facing impeachment complaints at the House of Representatives. Lawmakers may be taking a break for now, but they assure the public the quest for accountability is far from over. They'll be taking a break soon. Let's get on point with Batangas Representative Gerville Luistro, Vice Chairperson of the Committees on Justice and Public Accounts. Congresswoman, good to finally meet you in person. Sa TV lang po kita napapanood.
Thank you, Pinky, for inviting me here.
Pleasure to have you. Let's start with what happened yesterday during the, what do you call it? Is it again a hearing? Was it a suspension of the hearing on the Committee on Good Government, or magpapatuloy pa ho ba ito?
What happened yesterday was still a hearing, but you're correct, it is only suspended. The committee is not terminated, has not terminated yet the inquiry in aid of legislation. As to what happened yesterday, we made a rundown of our findings, and as far as I can recall, we also presented the possible violations which the officials of the Department of Education and the Office of the Vice President might be facing.
Okay, but why was it necessary to come up with the findings yesterday? Because it seemed for some people that you were terminating, the committee was terminating the hearings already.
I believe, Pinky, that there are still equally important matters which the committee wishes to investigate on. We just concluded on the investigation of confidential fund, and this is just a small part of the entire fund or the other matters which might be confronting the OVP and the DepEd. So we have yet to know with the committee leadership what other agenda they wish to be investigated in as far as the OVP and the DepEd are concerned.
That's mind-boggling for me, Congresswoman, because when you were supposed to have a hearing, please correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes medyo nalilito ako between the Quadcom and the Good Government, but there was supposed to be a hearing on the Good Government committee, but that was, you were supposed to call the two security officials of the Vice President, under the Vice President, and under DepEd. And hindi po yun natuloy because according to, I believe, your chairperson, there is an internal probe with the AFP. I had asked the AFP spokesperson about it, and wala pa pong nangyayaring internal probe. Wasn't it important for you and your colleagues to call Colonel La Chica and Colonel Nolasco, the two security officers where supposedly nagpunta yung pera na confidential funds?
Pinky, I wish to bring you back to the primary goal of conducting an inquiry in aid of legislation. Of course, that is to legislate. We identified already the gaps, the issues, the need to legislate, particularly on defining confidential funds, providing its regulation, and to be specific, upgrading the qualifications of special disbursing officer, and if I may include upgrading as well, the fidelity bond in order to protect the total public fund which will be in her possession. But going back to the two security officers which were mentioned by the SDOs, yes, we do respect what we believe the internal investigation which the AFP are currently doing, or they're about to start with that investigation, because we received this official information already that they will be starting their own investigation with respect to Colonel La Chica and to Colonel Nolasco. And we do not want to meddle on that because this is the AFP, we respect the institution, and we understand the sensitivity of the function that the AFP is discharging to the Philippine nation. Plus the fact, Pinky, that we wish to focus this time on the legislation, which is the primary objective of us conducting this inquiry.
It's actually really to improve legislation or to come up with new legislation. But again, I'm going to go back to this, Congresswoman. You've gone this far, 7 hearings. Ang missing link na lang po doon, if I may, would be the security officials and then the Vice President. Bakit ho kayo nag-decide na wag na ipatawag ito? I know you gave me the answer, but wasn't it important for someone like you who lays down the premise before you go on the attack, to actually talk to these two security officials kung saan po dinala ng 2 SDO or binigay ng SDO yung pera?
Siguro for me, Pinky, no, I will be looking forward to receiving the result of the investigation of the AFP. We believe in the leadership of the AFP, and we wish really to focus on our mandate of legislating. Bagaman ito pong mga investigasyon na ito, mga evidence, the facts that we were able to establish were done during the inquiry in aid of legislation. We want to make sure that we will not meddle, we will not influence the internal investigation, which the AFP is currently doing already.
Was there a request from the AFP?
We receive official information, Pinky, but as to whether it is a request not to summon or to invite these 2 personalities, I have yet to know if that is a request really not to include them in the resource persons, Pinky.
So basically, ang sinasabi niyo po, Congresswoman, there was a letter that said that there will be a probe.
There is an official information that there will be an investigation to be conducted by the AFP. And understand they also have this JAGO, which conducts investigation against the members of the AFP who are committing violations of the law.
What specific amendment or law do you think needs to be done, or created rather, or formed, to be able to not or disallow money? I mean, first of all, siguro, let's say the premise. Tama ho ba na tumanggap ang military security official ng pera galing po sa SDO?
In my personal standpoint, Pinky, it is not correct. Because that is the job of a special disbursing officer in the first place. Kaya nga po ang SDO ang banded eh. Kaya nga po ang SDO ang may fidelity bond. And that's what I do not understand, why both Gina Acosta, the SDO of OVP, and Edwin Fajarda, the SDO of DepEd, were both claiming that they turned over the entire amount to the security officers. Eh, di ba sila natakot para sa sarili nila? Because they are the accountable officers. And they will be the one facing this accountability and as far as the amount involved are concerned.
So, is legislation needed for the SDOs to understand exactly what their responsibilities are, or is that in place already?
To be frank, Pinky, there is no substantive law yet defining confidential law and defining the duties and responsibilities of an SDO. What you often hear from us during the investigation is Joint Circular number 2015-01. For lawyers, we call it procedural law merely. And all procedural laws must be grounded on substantive law. When we talk about substantive law, this is a legislation passed by Congress. And procedural law was passed by through the rulemaking power of COA in as far as Joint Circular 2015 01 is concerned. So to complete this information, Pinky, this is what we are leading to right now. We are crafting a bill which will create and define confidential law, confidential funds, and provide the restrictions with respect to disbursement, not only disbursement, even the auditing procedure. And we will be including as well violations and penalties thereof. We will be passing another law, Pinky, this time about the special disbursing officer. And to be particular, we want the qualifications upgraded. And we want the SDOs not a confidential official, not a coterminous official, but instead a career official. So she will be concerned in her own career, instead of relying only on orders of the head of agencies.
Because right now they're coterminous.
Yes.
Okay. But so hindi pa po tapos ang ang hearing. Are you saying na magpapatuloy pa po ito next year sa good government on the confidential funds?
During our last meeting, they were able to articulate that there will be other agenda to be investigated on and to be talked about in the Committee on Good Government. As to what this agenda are, we have yet to know.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you, what does that mean? I mean, sa madaling salita, tapos na ho ba ang hearing sa confidential funds?
Confidential funds, I believe, yes, tapos na. Pero I just want to share, no, this investigation started during the budget briefing. It is not yet an inquiry in aid of legislation. Budget briefing of both DepEd and the OVP. And I remember one of the subject matter of my interpellations is the department computerization program. It's not part of the confidential fund.
Right. It's sprung from that.
It's part of the regular fund.
Yeah.
And what we concluded yet is confidential fund.
So, malinaw na, tapos na po yung pag-uusap or hearing sa confidential funds. Would you say you're happy that it's terminated, or would you have wanted 1, 2, or 3 more hearings?
I'm happy because I am seeing already the bills which we will be filing, if I'm not mistaken, we'll be filing it tomorrow.
Okay, sa totoo lang, hindi ho kayo nabibitin.
Alam mo kasi, Pinky, I've been in investigation for so long a time, no? Wala namang umaamin eh. People just keep on denying and passing it to someone else. It is really a never-ending process. You cannot close it if you will be waiting to such time that you were able to pinpoint really who is really the one involved. At the very least, you can only tell yourself, your colleagues, and the committee, this will be accountable for this, these people will be accountable for that. But to reach a closure, as in, you can define already and identify already who is the one ultimately responsible for the money involved. I've never seen an investigation which was able to reach that point.
And that's part of a statement you mentioned during your interview with the press this morning. Sabi mo nga, sino ang nasa sentro ng lahat ng ito? Pag-uusapan po natin yan. But before I go on a break, just one follow-up question on that. Were you told by the leadership to end or terminate the hearing on confidential funds?
It was actually a consensus of the committee members, because we have really to determine when to end the investigation of confidential fund, because too many people are implicated already. And we have to consider also, Pinky, there are already pending impeachment complaints, and the complainants are anchoring their grounds on the findings that we have established already before the Committee on Good Government. So, plus, here's the AFP, they're committing and manifesting their intention to conduct their own investigation. So I believe, Pinky, we've reached that point that we need to stop already.
And nobody opposed it. Was
Nobody.
it unanimous?
Yes, it
to-
was a
to-
unanimous decision among the committee members.
Still lots to talk about. We'll continue our discussion with Congresswoman Gerville Luistro. After the break, stay tuned. This is On Point. Welcome back. You're watching On Point, still with us, Congresswoman Luistro. So yesterday, all the members gave their, I'd call it a PowerPoint presentation. And si Congresswoman Luistro, to summarize really the 7 days of hearing, you talked about 3 possible, please correct me if I'm wrong, you're a lawyer, infractions or possible criminal charges that could be filed. Number 1 was perjury. Second, graft and corruption. Also, bribery.
Bribery and graft and corruption, they go together.
Magkasama na po yun. Yung pinakahuli po yung plunder. Bibilisan ko lang po doon sa perjury. Kasi pag sinabi pong perjury normally, nagsinungaling ako. But you made it very clear that there was documentary evidence vis-a-vis their testimony kung saan kayo na po siguro mag-explain bakit po perjury to the SDOs, the Special Disbursing Officers.
They made their this certification, which is under oath. And by under oath, para maintindihan tayo ng mga tao, no? Ito po'y pinanumpaan na totoo sa harap ng isang notaryo publiko, who is Attorney Abella. Ano ba sabi niya dito sa certification? That the funds were used for activities in line with the confidential fund, things like that. That this is not among those which are not allowed to be the activities under the confidential fund. All representations about the proper utilization of confidential funds. And then, here comes Gina Acosta. She could not even answer who these recipients are. So, paano niya na-certify?
Ito po yun, yung pinapakita natin.
Yeah.
Yung
Paano niya
certification.
na-certify itong mga contents ng certification na to if in the very first place, wala naman pala siyang personal knowledge? Because according to her, the entire amount was turned over to Colonel Chica. So, to cut it short, nagsisinungaling siya. She was telling a lie under oath when she signed that certification.
What about ignorance? I know that doesn't excuse anyone of the law. What if she really didn't know much or didn't know what was part of really of her job description? Again, I'm not finding excuses for her, but siguro dun sa inyong pagtatanong, ano ho ba ang inyong naging pakiramdam when you were questioning Ms. Acosta?
Pinky, it's hard to claim ignorance, no? Kasi for a long period of time, she worked as SDO of Davao City. And then she moved to OVP in 2022, again as SDO. And assuming that it was a period of 5 years that Gina Acosta was working as Special Disbursing Officer, hindi ba niya naintindihan? The reason why she was bonded is because she's the one accountable for the public funds.
Papaano po, Congresswoman, dun sa sinabi niya na yun po ang utos sa kanya ng kanyang boss? Does that help her case in any way or form?
I don't think so. Because as a Special Disbursing Officer, it is very clear that she is the one accountable to the public funds. In case of loss, in case of misappropriation, she should be the one accountable to the government.
Okay, so babalik ko po yung certification na yon, and isama na po natin si Mr. Fajarda because siya naman po yung counterpart doon sa Department of Education. Pwede po siyang ma-charge ng perjury because she had signed
Yes.
that certification. But I believe there's also a signature of the Vice President there.
Yes.
So are you saying that the Vice President can also be charged, possibly charged with perjury?
With all due respect to the Vice President, but what applies to the 2 SDOs apply to her as well.
Okay, so that's clear. All right. Next point that you raised is graft and corruption. Siguro just a summary on this also, Congresswoman, please.
Okay. By the crime of bribery, ang nagkukommit po nito ay yung public official na tumatanggap. and by the crime of corruption of public officers, this is the person who can be a public official or a private individual giving bribe to the public official. So it always go hand in hand. May isang nagsusuhol, may isang tumatanggap ng suhol. And the reason why I raise these offenses, which are under the revised penal code, is because of the admission of Yusek Gloria Mercado, the head of procuring entity of DepEd, the admission of Mr. Osayas, the chairman of Bids and Awards Committee, and the admission of Ms. Catalan, the chief accountant of the Department of Education. All of them admitted that they received envelopes containing money. And we have to consider what is the reason why they were given those envelopes. Because one of the elements of these crimes, dapat tinanggap mo yung pera or ibinigay mo yung suhol because you are considering the position that he is discharging. You are being influenced to commit an offense which is in line with the duty that you are discharging. Who is Gloria Mercado? She is the head of the procuring entity. She's the one who signs before the head of the agency signs procurement. Who is Mr. Osayas? He is the chairman of the Bids and Awards Committee. And who is Ms. Catalan? She is the chief accountant who signs the liquidation report.
Now, what about it's their word against the Vice President's word, which you didn't hear much of?
Well, it will depend on the government agency which will be conducting the investigation. To be specific, it will be the Department of Justice or the Ombudsman. If we will go for an administrative proceedings as well. What we do in Congress is merely to recommend. Those recommendations will be part of our committee report. The committee report will contain the bills which we will be passing in line with the inquiry which we conducted and the filing of the necessary charges against the personalities whom we believe there are bases already to file actions.
So, Congresswoman, your committee report will include recommending the filing of charges.
Yes.
Hindi niyo po sasabihin sa concerned agencies, it's up to you. You are telling us right now that you will recommend the filing of charges.
I believe that way, Pinky.
Okay. And to whom?
That we have to finalize. We were done presenting all the possible offenses as to who will be included. We have yet to finalize that with the committee.
But that's pretty clear for you, who are culpable, because of the three possible charges that you mentioned: perjury, bribery or / graft and corruption, and the next one is plunder. And in all those three, you had mentioned personalities, ma'am. Sa perjury, nandun po yung dalawang SDO, Fajarda, Acosta, nakasign din po si VP. Yung perjury, ay yung bribery, yung tatlo pong DepEd officials, supposedly, ang nagbigay po ng kanilang, yung si Sunshine Fajarda, yung envelope, hindi ho ba? And sa plunder, which we're about to talk about, is this part. So we're talking about 500 million pesos.
It's actually
under
yeah,
yes,
you're correct.
Under the OVP.
You're correct.
112,500,000.
That is for
The
DepEd.
DepEd. Yun po, yun ang total. And in fact, you said, napakalaki at nakakalula. The amount surpasses the threshold of plunder, which is of course 50 million. Ibig sabihin, lampas na po ito sa threshold ng plunder. Ito po yung gusto ko pong malaman. Sinabi niyo po, kailangan po ng malalim na investigasyon para malaman sino ang nakinabang sa perang ito. Such an investigation is not for Congress to conduct anymore. Again, why not? Why not? Just siguro ipagtagpi-tagpi, ma'am, at makita kung yung sinasabi niyong sino ho ba talaga ang nakinabang at sino ang nasa sentro ng perang ito.
Pinky, balikan natin yung purpose ng conducting an inquiry in aid of legislation, I will always bring you back to that point, no? Our objective in conducting this investigation is to be able to come up with laws to fill the gaps. During the investigation of the confidential fund of the OVP and DepEd, we've seen already that there are a lot of loopholes, there are no laws, there are no basis for the accountability, reason why we are filing these bills on confidential fund and even on the qualification of SDOs. No? So what I wish to point out, Pinky, it is really hard to reach that final point when you are going to satisfy yourself, all right, the money is with this person. She's the one who misappropriated that. Because if we do that, Pinky, we might be losing our primary goal of legislating. What is important to us, Pinky, nakita namin yung problema, nakita namin yung kakulangan ng batas, and now we are legislating. And pursuant to the separation of power principle that we have here in the Philippines, no, it's now time that we turn this over to the proper agency. I believe this is the executive. Sila na ang mag-investigate, sila ang tumapos, and given these recommendations, they can consider this as guidelines, as advice, but it will be totally up to them whether they will follow them in toto, or whether they will conduct an investigation and rely on the result of the investigation against whom they will be filing those cases.
Would you say you would be very disappointed if no cases would be filed by any concerned agency?
I believe yes. Because from my personal standpoint, Pinky, the evidence is overwhelming. Huwag na tayong lumayo. Balikan na lang natin si Mary Grace Piatos at si Kokoy Villamin. How come no one can explain who these people are? And the PSA already certified that these two personalities do not appear in their database. Whether it is birth certificate, whether it is marriage, whether it is death, wala. So sino itong mga taong ito?
But kailangan pa po dagdagan yun, hindi po ba, Congresswoman? Because 405 supposedly out of the 677.
Yes, you are correct about that. There's an additional information. 400 plus do not appear as well in the database of the PSA. Ito nga, I believe is 4,000 in total. So medyo nagtataka din ako kasi I remember my request was to have a rundown of the entire 4,000. At least come up with figures.
Is the 4,000 the ARs that you're referring to? Okay.
At least come up with figures. Ilan yung nasa database at ilan yung wala. So parang 400 out of 600 itong latest information that we received, which only means na hindi pa tapos.
You said, Congresswoman, that the evidence is overwhelming. When I asked you will you be disappointed if government agencies will not file cases, you said you will be very disappointed because there's overwhelming evidence. Let's go to the impeachment now. Do you think it warrants a betrayal of public trust on the Vice President after this overwhelming evidence that you have unearthed, uncovered during the hearing?
With all due respect to the Vice President, but I have seen the amount of evidence that we were able to establish during the Good Government Committee hearings. Yes, I believe it can be considered as ground for betrayal of public trust. But I know that you will be asking the next question, what will you do with the impeachment complaint? I haven't seen the impeachment complaint, no? And we have to understand that for an impeachment complaint to continue, first and foremost, dapat compliant siya in as far as the form and substance are concerned. And this form and substance have to be verified and checked depending on the contents of the complaint. I don't know if they were able to draft it properly to allege properly, to raise those evidence that we were able to unearth during the investigation properly. So I do not want Pinky to preempt the process that the Congress will be conducting in as far as the impeachment complaints are concerned.
But am I correct in saying that if it passes in form and substance, you are likely to approve or say yes to the impeachment, because you said, with all due respect to the Vice President?
With all due respect to you, Pinky, no, I do not want to preempt my answer. Let me see the complaint first. I will be sitting, I believe, as Vice Chair of Committee on Justice. Magkakaroon pa rin po ng investigation doon, no? Kasi iba ang perspective ng inquiry in aid of legislation. While I am saying that the evidence is overwhelming, let us remember that our objective there is really to come up with the necessary laws. Itong impeachment, of course, we understand that the purpose of which is to remove the Vice President from office. These are two different things. I believe that the perspective are entirely different. So I wish to see for myself the contents of the complaint and to hear the investigation, to participate in investigation. Let's see how it will go before we decide whether we approve or otherwise the impeachment of the Vice President.
Another question came to fore. Kailangan po kasi pumasa ito in form and substance, hindi ba? But how do you correlate that to this being a political exercise? Kailangan ho ba talagang pumasa siya in form and substance, knowing that it's a political exercise anyway?
Yes, it has to pass the requirement of form and substance. Ako, for myself, I am very particular about that. Although it is a political exercise, I agree with you. Pero dapat kasi compliant with the requirements of the law, yung impeachment process. That's what I'm saying earlier, Pinky, no? Kahit I am saying already that there is ample amount of evidence that I have seen during the Committee on Good Government investigation, we have to examine really the impeachment complaint, whether it is compliant in as far as the form and substance is concerned. Otherwise, it may not be approved by the members of the committee or even by the plenary.
So, I wish we had more time, pero papasadahan ko na po ito. Meron na ho bang lumapit sa inyo para mag-sign doon sa kinakailangan na 1/3 na signature para po maipasa ito ng mabilisan?
None at all, Pinky. Wala pa.
If somebody went to your office or spoke to you and asked you to sign,
I will read the impeachment complaint first. I will read the impeachment complaint first and base my stand on whether to sign or not on the compliance of the impeachment complaint as to form and substance.
I wish we really had more time, but we're going to have to end the show because it's also very important. I wanted to pick your mind or your brain into what would happen hypothetically if it was passed by Congress, if it went to the Senate, and then it being an election season, may labing dalawa po na bagong magiging senador, whether re-elected or new senators. I mean, how would that come into play? I don't know if I guess there's no jurisprudence here or anything. It's never happened in the past.
In one of my interviews, I intentionally raised that legal question. Suppose we are able to endorse it to the Senate before the 2025 election, and the senators are not able to finish the impeachment trial. Will the 12 new senators be allowed, along with the 12 old senators, should I say, be allowed to continue with the impeachment trial? I have checked already the Philippine Constitution, the jurisprudence, and the rules of the Congress. The laws are silent.
Okay.
So I think it is for the Supreme Court.
Right, this will have to be. If it happens. I
Yes.
mean, everything again, hypothetically. Congresswoman Luistro, a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. And the next Quadcom hearing will be
Thursday, I believe.
on Thursday. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And that's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.